You think I'm sick? Well, the only disease I've got is modern life. A schnut-busting gauntlet of inefficiency and misery that's one long parade of letdowns, put-downs, trickle-downs, shutouts, freeze-outs, sellouts, numbnuts, nick-and-puts, and nimrods. All making every day as much fun as waxing a flaming Pontiac with your tongue. Or even if you do luck into the possibility of some fleeting pleasure, like, say, if some nymphomaniac telephone operators with the muscle control of Romanian mat slappers agree to a little strip air hockey, it'll be over before it starts. Because some vowel-lacking, feta-reeking cab jockey slams his checker up your hatchback, and the cab is owned by some piñata spanker from a Santeria cult in Wacalpa who starts shaking chicken bones at you and gives you a boil on your neck so big, all it needs is Michael Jordan's autograph to make it complete. And even with all this, I still drag my sorry butt off the ceiling every morning and stick my face in the reaping machine for one more day, knowing when it's time to flash the cosmic card key at those pearly gates, I won't be in the coffin anyway, because some underhanded undertaker sold my heart, pancreas, and other assorted good and plenty to that same Santeria cult. So does anybody really wonder why anybody is hanging on to sanity by the atoms on the tips of their fingernails while life dirty dances on their digits? And is it really any wonder that I seem deranged?
The 80s and 90s were an incredibly interesting time for animation. For a long time, Disney had a monopoly on animation as an art form, with some competition from companies like Don Bluth Productions, but this was largely relegated to children's entertainment. The works of Ralph Bakshi helped spearhead more adult animation, but by 1980, the most prominent of his work, like the Lord of the Rings films and Fritz the Cat, had already been released. Although his works Hey Good Lookin', American Pop, and Fire and Ice would all be released in the early 1980s, and his hybrid animation live-action film Cool World would release in 1992. This is all to say that animation as entertainment for adults has had a checkered past, and while there were pioneers like Bakshi producing truly great and experimental animated work for a more mature audience, and while his work did receive commercial and critical success, adult animation was still having a hard time breaking into the mainstream. In 1989, however, this would change with the premiere of The Simpsons, which would pave the way for adult animated sitcoms like Family Guy, American Dad, Bob's Burgers, and countless other shows that would go on to air for one season and then never see the light of day again, like Napoleon Dynamite and Alan Gregory. However, in the mid-90s, a different cartoon would lay the groundwork for a different path for adult animation, but not in the way of the traditional animated sitcom. This was a show that would become the genome from which shows like The Venture Brothers, Bojack Horseman, and Rick and Morty were born, and that show is Duckman. Duckman stars Jason Alexander of Seinfeld fame as Eric Tiberius Duckman, a narcissistic, misogynistic, selfish, crude, and incompetent private detective. Duckman is accompanied on most of his investigations by his partner, a pig named Cornfed. Cornfed is essentially a reincarnation of Joe Friday from Dragnet.
Don't think you have a corner on all of virtue vision in the country, or that everybody else is fat and selfish and you're the first generation to come along that's felt dissatisfied. They all have, you know, about different things, and most of them didn't have the same opportunity and freedoms that you do.
It's the dream again, Duckman. You're letting it win. I know. I used to have a recurring dream. I'd dream I fell and hit my head on a fishbowl, hurt myself just bad enough to work graveyard shift at a convenience store. A group of Hare Krishnas always came in at 4 a.m. and bought 16 gallons of Mr. Slushy and a package of banana-flavored ding-dongs. Then the Swedish bikini team jumped out of a magazine and read Moby Dick to me inside a giant carton of cottage cheese. Why, I'd ask myself. What could it mean? Am I mad? Or is the world simply a mystery too complex to understand?
Duckman's wife Beatrice has been dead for about a year at the beginning of the series, and together the two had 3 children, Ajax and a pair of conjoined twins, Charles and Mambo. After Duckman's wife died, their home was, for some reason, left to her identical twin sister Bernice, who harbors a deep resentment for him. After Bernice is elected to Congress in season 4, yes, I know that sounds strange, but bear with me, she's replaced by her and Beatrice's long-lost triplet, Beverly, who is much kinder and soft-spoken. Beatrice, Beverly, and Bernice's semi-comatose mother also lives in the house, but due to her condition, barely functions as anything more than an occasional fart machine. While Duckman is technically a sitcom, I think that it's different from the other traditional animated sitcoms featuring dim-witted fathers and their families, and more akin to shows like, as I said earlier, The Venture Brothers, Rick and Morty, and Bojack Horseman, due to the self-loathing and dark nature of the main character. And yes, I do know that jerk-ass Homer is a thing in forums and discussions about The Simpsons, and has been for a very long time, but he still lacks that fundamental self-loathing that some of these other characters have. Duckman's comedy is irreverent and quick-witted, and in that regard, it's reminiscent of early episodes of The Simpsons.
That school is a hellhole!
I just don't understand. It used to be such a fine school. What could have caused such a decline?
No taxes! No taxes!
And while I know that especially earlier episodes sometimes went to darker places, it wasn't quite in the same vein as these other shows, including Duckman, often do. Duckman is self-loathing, not believing himself to be worthy of any true happiness or joy. Whether this is a personality flaw he struggled with his entire life, or because this is a result of latent guilt he might feel for evidently accidentally killing his wife.
The point is I wasn't expecting anything to happen. But when your cigarette punctured the bullwinkle float and he started losing helium until his antler dipped into the clown car and sent it crashing into Puff the Magic Dragon, who bounced off Snoopy and knocked me into an open manhole, killing me, I realized this could happen to anyone.
Remains to be seen. Although the show did end with a cliffhanger ending revealing that she had been alive the entire time. He's selfish, he pushes his family away at every opportunity, he constantly forgets his son Mambo's name.
Okay, Charles, La Bamba.
Mambo.
Whatever.
He is, by all intents and purposes, the prototype for this sort of character. The sort of character that's too smart for their own good, offering witty and biting social commentary in their given situations. The sort of character so aware of their own incompetence that they try to hide this insecurity with a painfully transparent ego. The kind of character that hates themselves to such a degree that they won't allow themselves to get close to anyone for fear that their truest self will be so off-putting that whoever learns it will abandon them. The sort of character that countless insufferable pseudo-intellectuals will admire and try to emulate without realizing that they are, in fact, entirely missing the point. And in these regards, I find this show incredibly interesting. This show does share the sitcom trope of an episodic reset with very little in the way of serialized storylines, and as a result, some of the characters can feel a little one note after a while. However, Duckman aired from 1994 to 1997, and this sort of serialization wasn't incredibly common for animated programming, especially animated programming that wasn't horribly dubbed anime or children's programming designed to sell toys. And even in the latter's case, that serialization is hardly there. That isn't to say that things don't change in small ways over time. For example, at the beginning of the show, while nearly every interaction Duckman has with Bernice is hostile and violent, over time the two do learn to get along slightly better with each other for the sake of the children. They even appear to have some level of attraction to each other, since in episode 9, after they get drunk, they do end up sleeping together, although nothing really ever comes of that. Duckman was incredibly ahead of its time with its humor, with a ton of these jokes just as applicable now as they were in the mid to late 90s. Take this monologue from season 1, episode 13, Joking the Chicken.
But it's precisely when humor is offensive that we need it most. Comedy should provoke. It should blast through prejudices, challenge preconceptions. Comedy should always leave you different than when it found you.
The rebel seems roused.
Sure, humor can hurt, even alienate. But the risk is better than the alternative. A steady diet of innocuous, childproof, flavorless mush. Demand to be challenged, to be offended, to be treated like thinking, reasoning adults. And raise your children to be the same. Don't let a comedian, a network, a congressional committee, or an evil genius take away your freedom to laugh at whatever you want.
Now, I know that this comes across as a monologue that empowers the movement of people saying that you can't joke about anything anymore, but I don't think that's what it's saying. This monologue isn't condoning comedy that punches down for no reason. It's endorsing the idea that sometimes offensive comedy can make you think, and sometimes the fact that it's offensive is kind of the point. It's less about comedic hacks making jokes about transgender people that only serve to punch down, and more so jokes like Mac doing blackface in It's Always Sunny, or Michael Scott making gay jokes in The Office. The humor isn't supposed to be derived from these characters engaging in this activity in of itself, but from the audience's knowledge that what is happening is wrong. And this was a monologue written in 1994. So, have we really come that far as a society? Duckman doesn't have as many intense emotional moments as some of its contemporaries, but when it wants to, it does an amazing job of showing you what it can do. There's a scene in season 3 where Duckman has a chance to talk to himself in the past before he marries his wife. His past self asks him if he's making the right decision, if things are going to work out. And Duckman doesn't have the heart to tell him how things end up. So, he simply says this.
There are some things I gotta know. For instance, my marriage. Am I doing the right thing marrying Beatrice? Do we grow old together? You're gonna love her until the day you die. Maybe I don't need to know any more than that.
And God, that just gets me. Little moments like this are part of what makes the show worth watching. I think that this show lying just beneath the surface of the water on the adult animation iceberg is for a few reasons. Duckman was popular enough to run for 4 seasons and 70 episodes on the USA Network in the 1990s. And while in our modern era of 30-plus season TV shows this may not seem like much, that's a pretty respectable run of television. I feel like one of the reasons why the show hasn't garnered as substantial of a cult following as other shows from its era is because the network it was on was a network people mostly found themselves flipping past on their way to cartoon channels, sports channels, or 24-hour news channels. I'll give you 10 seconds to name the one breakout show that aired on USA. It was Monk, a procedural about an autistic detective trying to solve the case of his wife's murder. And this wouldn't premiere until 2002, 5 years after Duckman was canceled. Another reason is, despite the fact that a lot of aspects of Duckman still hold up to this day, newer viewers might be distracted by the fact that the shows that it inspired are just a little better. It doesn't mean that the show is bad, and the fact that it seems to have inspired some of the best animated comedies of the modern era means that it's earned some credit. But it's just nature that the shows that came after and built on the things that it helped to establish are just a little bit better. I also think the art is kind of ugly. I read somewhere that this was apparently on purpose, but it does get a little distracting sometimes. Like, look at this guy. What the fuck is happening here? Despite its struggle to maintain a large cult following, the small and dedicated fan base that the show does have are vocal and will scream from the rooftop that it's one of the best animated shows ever made. And I'm inclined to agree purely for the shows that it served to inspire and pave the way for. Duckman is a really interesting look into 90s culture and was ahead of its time to such a degree that even watching it in the 2020s feels like there's something to take away from a large portion of it. And I highly recommend checking it out. As of right now, all 4 seasons are available on YouTube to watch for free. That's all I have for you today, guys. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. And as always, my name is Isaiah, and thank you for watching my video.